Alright, yeah, this is the second video to my experiences of schizophrenia and mental health. I just want to share more experiences with you, really, kind of my journey of dealing with schizophrenia. First of all, I'd like to say, really, the label of schizophrenia is a kind of quite broad term for a particular group of symptoms and experiences. Like in the kind of psychiatric profession, I suppose it's kind of usually down to what they call kind of like auditory or visual hallucinations, hearing voices, hearing auditory hallucinations, what they call it, called hearing voices, and visual can involve visual hallucinations, and generally that's kind of psychosis, where what I've learned is psychosis is termed as someone who's not having insight into their own experiences and conditions, and condition really. I don't know all the kind of like proper terms to it, but that's generally, I think, what it is. It's kind of usually involves, can involve hearing voices and what they call delusional states. Usually tends to come with a lot of confusion, can extremely affect communication and things. I need to read up a bit on it more, really, to come up with the proper factual, but that's usually what it entails. Is usually a detachment, a withdrawal from people and normal society, difficulty in functioning and things like that. Let me go through, I'm going to go through more my own experiences and what led up to my schizophrenia, my experience, but like I said, I don't want to get too caught up in the label of schizophrenia. Everyone's own condition is their own. People's own individual story for getting to that point is different. So, people might have similar experiences, and there tends to be a lot of similar experiences with psychosis and schizophrenia. But generally, obviously, it's everyone's own individual experience. Alright, yeah, sorry about that. So it's everyone's own individual experience, really. I'm just trying to hold this camera. Sorry. So building up to my kind of experiences, at the age of kind of like 15, I started kind of fasting, trying to starve myself to lose weight. I believe kind of trauma, very negative and hard experience I went through my kind of 12, 13, 14 years of my early teenage years was very difficult for me. I did go through what I believe to be kind of emotional trauma and things. Without playing my own violin, I just believe it's very important to be aware of, what's caused our kind of upset in our kind of, psychological chemistry. To be aware of where things might have gone wrong, and try and be aware of what's contributed to our own mental health difficulties, or just our own personality, because we're all shaped by the experiences we've had, especially in our childhood and teenage years. They're very formative years of our lives, and so to me, I mean, I love my family. I have a great connection and relationship with most of my close family and extended family, but there were experiences where our family went through tough times, and I'm aware of that, and that did have an impact on me. I do believe diet and kind of even just drinking enough water. I mean, I never used to realise how important that is, to keep hydrated and keep, your body and brain functioning on the right amount of water, and good water. And that I've met people at kind of the Voices Network, Hearing Voices Network, at workshop and things, and a couple of people have said, I've realised as I got older that for a lot of my teenage years and younger adult life, I never drunk enough water, and even just that in itself can cause, difficulties in brain functioning and thinking and things. And I don't think it's all like physical and diet. There are many different levels to what causes mental disruption, like psychosis and mental ill health. But these are contributing factors, and I think it's very important to see it in a holistic way. Understand there are dietary supplements, mineral and vitamin deficiencies. There are kind of things about hydration, the toxicity in the body, environmental impacts, as well as psychological, spiritual, emotional, mental, all that, or the whole shebang, so to speak, of it. I think it's very important to look at these things in a holistic way. I mean, I was on a course a while ago called Hearing Voices course, about how to deal with hearing voices, and there were a couple of people who just all believed that it was just all about chemical imbalance of the brain. And really, to me, that's just far too simplistic. It's way more than that. The psychology and biofield of the human body and mind, is more complex than just a few chemicals going on. But obviously, that's, to me, that's the kind of the material, that's the physical output of something more going on. That's one dimension, that's one level of it. That's how I understand it anyway. So anyway, I'll go more into my experiences. So I suppose really go back into more of the history. So I was kind of like started to starve myself to lose weight. In my early teens, I kind of was picked on a lot for being overweight, and I was very sensitive to that, ultra sensitive to what people said, and that did lead up to a lot of deep psychological problems and kind of, in a way, I suppose, body dysmorphia. I mean, a couple of people said, sure, you didn't have anorexia, but it was more, after I started to lose weight, I found it became motivated by spirituality, by the feeling of emptiness and elation I used to get from controlling my diet and controlling how much I ate, and I felt great sense of increasing my willpower, and I found a lot about fasting, how that can have amazing spiritual effects, and I do believe that it does, but it has to be done right, and which I didn't do really. I used to fast for 2 or 3 days, have one day I have 2 or 3 meals, then fast for another 2 or 3 days, and that carried on for a couple of years really, with obviously times on and off and stuff. But I didn't, when I was eating me and my family went through a lot of poverty, and I was kind of mainly eating stuff like cereal and toast, or I might have a meal at other places, and stuff, and or meal at home, whatever, sometimes. But we went through a lot of poverty, and I wasn't having the right nutrition, and I didn't drink enough. Anyway, there was obviously psychological issues in my early teens I went through. I won't go into that too much because I think it will look bad on people and things, so I don't want to go into that. But yeah, I do believe in the sense though we are all responsible for ourselves. As adults, we may have carried scars from our youth and scars from our past, and I'm not saying that's easy to overcome at all, but it's our responsibility now as adults, now realising that, to make that step towards recovery and keep yourself on the straight and narrow and keep working at it. And obviously there are sometimes very much people who are to blame, but getting involved in the blame game is never really going to help anyone. You realise what's influenced your mind and psychology in that way, and you just got to keep going and try your best to keeping mentally well, and happy. And forgiveness and understanding are an amazing tool, both amazing tools to, as well as others, to kind of on that road of recovery and on that road of emotional, mental health and well-being. So yeah, definitely understanding and forgiveness is a very key role, because if we're always caught in blame and judgment to others and putting fault onto others, we're not going to move into happier emotions in ourselves. There obviously are people sometimes who are to blame, and there are people who it is their fault, but we need to, I feel we really need to forgive and understand them and ourselves and the whole reasons why it all come about. Anyway, so yeah, I'll go back to one of the main, I think, key experiences that did kind of rock my mental health and begun kind of my fall into psychosis. One thing was, after my first ecstasy tablet, all my friends, my closest friends, quite a few of them, said I was never the same after that. I suppose in a way of what Timothy Leary talks about kind of like, drug-induced enlightenment. And I was fasting and doing psychic training and psychic awareness, working on seeing auras and picking up feelings. I was kind of becoming what they call clairsentient, where I could feel the presence of spirits and ghosts and things. I was really getting into kind of like, what they call paranormal phenomenon and stuff, but in a spiritual way. I did understand, I was very spiritually motivated to gain an extrasensory perception and understand the kind of amazing dynamics of what is out there and stuff. Anyway, so yeah, so I was 17, and me and my friends were all starting to experiment with things, and I was 17 or 16 I think, and we all went to the nearby city and around a friend's house and all took ecstasy. And I'd been fasting for a couple of days before that, not kind of looking after my body, but I didn't realise that at the time. I was just going along with it. And to get seen, I blew my head away. I felt the most sincere amount of universal love I'd ever felt in my life, you know. And I felt I connected to everything. I mean, I remember the sun coming up in the morning, me being in the garden, and I literally felt true oneness, almost like who I was just one kind of cell, totally connected to the all. I spoke in a really deep, profound way. I felt these feelings. I was seeing kind of auras of the trees and traces of everything, and my mind was almost working like a kind of enlightened genius, really. I actually felt for that evening, you know, that time when I was up. I remember reading my friend's mind and seeing electricity run, the chi and electricity run through wires and things, and I really freaked this guy out because I was speaking so philosophically and spiritually and deeply and profoundly. This guy got really freaked out at me and I thought I was just kind of like really intensely mad. Anyway, but I really feel from that experience, in a way, I kind of stayed up and I didn't come back down. And my brain, my mind, my psychology was so interrupted in that way, but very suddenly and profoundly, that it did create great imbalances in my overall psychological chemistry, my own spiritual well-being, my emotional well-being. It really rocked. And then other experiences I had experimenting with acid and magic mushrooms and things, and I do really believe I was having great shamanic insights. I was using these drugs to reach higher states of consciousness, which I did, but they were too sudden and too impactful, too impactful, really. I mean, I do believe I've benefited from these experiences, I really have, but I'll really go back to my old self and say, you know, do it in a slow, steady way. Be patient. You've got to be patient with yourself. You know, fasting, meditation, there's hundreds of variations of meditation and other practices that can reach these spiritual insights. You don't have to. I really believe you don't have to go down the drug route to do that. But they're saying that tribes and cultures throughout all of history have used mind alternating, conscious changing substances to see certain things they never would have normally seen, and I really appreciate that. And I think that's kind of caught between the two. I do feel very I would recommend, you know, people, I would, you know, try not take drugs really, but some people, it's their way of life and they prefer to do it, you know, and they're happy doing it. It gives them pleasure and stuff. Anyway, but to me, you know, to me that was my choice at the time, and I suppose I've benefited and have suffered because of it. But anyway, so I had these experiences. I used to keep a diary. I used to call them acknowledgements of reality. I was kind of studying my experiences with alternate states of mind. And so I started when I was about nearing my 19th birthday. I started to hear voices. I mean, I was communicating in my reality, in my experiences. I was communicating with spirit guides up to that in meditation, through channeling and automatic writing and things. I was connecting to the higher realms. But I do believe I opened doors which other things could come through too. I didn't have that protection, and during my psychosis and afterwards, I kind of felt very angry to the one, to God, because I felt I was doing everything right. I was really well intended, well meaning. I had all the ambitions to really try and do well, you know, and do something good in this world, in this life, and try and be a spiritual healer or teacher. And I felt I did everything right, but I still went through this amazingly suffering and painful psychosis for many years on and off. And so I was very angry at God, the one, at the force of life, the spirit of life. I was very angry at that, for that happening to me, really. So that was a big upset. But yeah, so my experiences, so I started hearing these voices, and they were saying stuff like, and it's weird because they would say stuff in my head and I would feel like I'd become them just by these voices, these spirits. And I do believe voices, I think there's many different ways to understand voices. I do believe sometimes voices can actually be spirits or entities speaking at you to try and confuse you, or they might have a myriad of different intentions. Some are very good, some have good intentions, but these negative voices, to me, can often be entities or spirits entering your psyche, entering your psyche and speaking, trying to be very destructive and negative in your mind space. Anyway, I'll stop this now and I'll carry on in the next video.